All right, everybody. Welcome to the Scottsdale Big Book Study, where we will study the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today's date is, it's Saturday, and it's the 28th of December, 2024. My name is Johan, and I'm a recovered compulsive overeater in Sweden, and I will be your host for today's study. And I have some beautiful co-hosts helping me today. I got Danny, I got Rob, and I got Sue. Thank you so much for your service. If you have any questions during the meeting, please contact either myself or any of the co-hosts by private message in the chat function. The chat function will be disabled until 5 minutes before the question and answer session. Please note that the speaker, Harlan G, will be recorded for the duration of the study. However, the question and answer session which follows will not be recorded. We ask if you can please make sure to keep your microphone on mute at all times during today's study, and also turn off your video if you're exercising, eating, or if you need to step away from your screen for any reason. During the meeting, we will post a link to our 7th tradition. This money goes towards the cost of our Zoom account, the cost of uploading our recordings, and we also send contributions to our intergroup and WSO. We will post a link to the previous week's recordings. These are available by clicking on the link that will be posted in the chat box. And now, ladies and gents, the man, the myth, the concept, the one and only, here he is, Harlan G. Take it away, man.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you, Johan. Thank you very much. I'm so glad to be here. This is a very, very special day for me, because tomorrow, as we were just saying, tomorrow, if I make it till tomorrow, I will have 26 years of beautiful, blissful abstinence from compulsive overeating. And I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but I just need to take a minute to thank God Almighty for the miracles that have come through in my life. I wish certain things were different about my life, like we all do. I wish that I was retired, and I wish that certain other aspects of my life were different and I perceive as better. But it has been a wild ride. I've been to thousands and thousands of live OA meetings, although I don't go to live meetings much anymore unless I'm out of town. I don't really go much, but I've been to thousands of them, and I've met tens of thousands of people. Some of them taught me what to do by doing it, and some of them became cautionary tales. Some people taught me what to do by dying, and some people taught me what to do by struggling, and some people taught me what to do by a good example. And I've been very, very lucky. But while we're on the subject of just sort of talking here at the beginning, if I could impress upon any of you to come to the OA birthday coming up here in just a few weeks. It is the 17th, 18th, and 19th of January. We are on December 28th, 2024, but the OA birthday is January 17th, 18th, and 19th, 2025. We will be there for the 65th birthday of OA on the exact date that it started. The first OA meeting ever was on January 19th, January 19th, 1960. That was the first OA meeting ever in the world, and we will all be together for that date in Los Angeles, which is where OA started, is in Los Angeles. I also want to ask each and every one of you as we get started that if you can possibly keep your camera on, it is a huge help, because a camera on is much more inviting to people than a black box with a name and a phone number in it. So if you could keep your camera on, it is a big help to making people feel a little bit more welcome, a little more welcome here. I'm so glad you're here. I would hate to celebrate my 26 years alone. It'll actually be tomorrow. I have to make it till tomorrow. We're going to start today on page 92, continue to speak of alcoholism. Page 92, continue to speak of alcoholism, which is the last paragraph on that starts on that page. Page 92, continue to speak of alcoholism. We have been talking about sponsorship, and all through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we are taught that service is imperative. And we are taught on page 14 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. On page 14 of the big book of AA, we are told what Ebby was telling Bill was this. Bill writes on the bottom of 14, my friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles. What are the principles? The principles are the steps. You know, this thing of the principle of this is honesty, and the principle of that step is integrity, and the principle of that step is courage. Bill didn't know from that. When he talks of the principles, he's talking about the steps. That stuff about the principle of this that came out in the 80s and 90s. Bill was already passed away when that came out. So my friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Particularly was it imperative. What does imperative mean? Important above all else. Important above all else. To work with others as he had worked with me. Now, I am all for people that serve on committees and help retreats and are secretaries of meetings. Without that service, we wouldn't have an organization. We wouldn't have an OA if we didn't have that. And those things are very important. Somebody has to chair the group. Somebody has to be the treasurer and the secretary and the literature person and so on and so forth. Somebody has to do that. But the service that Ebby and Bill are referring to, well, Bill's referring to it, is sponsorship, to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. Now listen to this next thing. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life, how do I do that? Glad I asked. Through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink again. If he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that. Go back to page 92. So the bottom line is that we are getting a warning. Sponsor or die. And we want to get ourselves in line with the promise of the book. There's no promise in this book, I feel, that is as important as the one on page 89. The one on page 89 says nothing ensures immunity from drinking like intensive work with other alcoholics. Isn't that what I came in here for, is immunity? I didn't come in here because I wanted to grow a spiritual life. I didn't come in here to find God. I didn't come in here to find you blokes either. I came in the rooms, I sat there, jealous and self-pity were coursing through my veins. I was 30 years younger than any of you. Man, that's not true anymore. I was 30 years younger than any of you. I was 24 years old. You guys were in your 50s and 60s, and I was certain I would never live that long to be you. So what did you know about me? And you guys had gone on dates, and you'd had sex, and you had romance. I never had any of that. And, you guys had money, and I was this, and all kind. I identified out what are the three jobs of the ego: make me right, make me different, and make me feel good right now. Well, in keeping with making me feel different, if I can't be the best person here, I want to be the worst person here. So I just was full of rage and full of crazy thoughts. And So, I just didn't identify in, but eventually I did. And eventually, as I said, I came in and on February 2nd, 1979. I had 7, 8 years of abstinence at one point and a short stint of about 4 or 5 years of abstinence at one point. And then on December the 29th, 1998, I put the food down and I have not picked it up since. But the real miracle is not that I haven't picked up the food. This is important for me. I don't want to eat the food. Let me say that again. I don't want to eat the food. In other words, I'm very seldom, if ever, tempted. Every once in a blue moon, I will get a whiff of food in the grocery store. I will see something or hear something that will trigger a response that will say very momentarily, oh, I wish I could have one of those. But that thought is supplanted very quickly with the idea that that's going to kill me. I don't really want that. I really don't want that. So I am so grateful today to be in a place of neutrality. What else do I know? If I do not work my butt off, that place of neutrality will fade away very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. I will not maintain that place of neutrality for very long. All right, let's go to 92 in the big book, 4th edition. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. Talk about the conditions of body and mind which accompany it. Let's stop right there for just a second. I do not just talk about the conditions of the body and the mind that accompany my compulsive overeating. I do not. I sponsor men who have a minimum of 100 to 150 pounds to lose. I got a couple of people when they had lost that weight already, but I don't normally sponsor people who are not in that stratosphere of 100 to 150 pounds overweight minimum. And because of God's gracious knowledge, I have been cursed, blessed with knowledge of what this disease does to a person when you are over a certain weight. And I can identify things for that man that he might have believed, as I did, were very secret unto him. When I came into this program, I believed that there was no one, even in OA, that could really relate to what I had been through in my life. When I say that, what I specifically mean, and this is what I share with people that I talk to about sponsorship, there are things I have experienced that they have experienced as well. For instance, I know what it's like to loathe the image of your body, to loathe the image of yourself. I know what it's like to be disgusted by your own reflection in either a mirror or a store window. I know what it's like as a man to be emotionally and physically emasculated by this disease. I know what it's like to be incontinent, constantly peeing yourself, constantly having urine coming out that you wish didn't. I know what it's like to crap in your pants on a regular basis. I know what it's like to be sweating in the middle of a blizzard, to be sweating in the middle of a cold snap. Because when I was extremely heavy, I never wore a coat. And I lived in one of the coldest places in the world, Chicago, Illinois. There were days I was cold, but by and large, I was always hot. Summer was a torture for me. Winter, not so much. Now, very much the opposite. Not only have I lost over 500 pounds, but I drink a lot of water and I'm on blood thinners. So I'm always frickin' cold. When my lady friend comes to my house, the first thing she does is she turns down the heat or turns it off, because I keep my house at about almost 80 degrees, 78 degrees. I'm freezing. I am wearing sweatpants. Right now, I'm wearing sweatpants. I'm going to go out to lunch, so I'm going to wear long pants. But the bottom line is, I'm always freaking cold. Well, I know what it's like to be sweating in the middle of a blizzard, sweating in the middle of a cold snap. I also know what it's like, and I don't think we're alone. It doesn't matter what you weigh. I think we're all privy to this information. Most of us are. To watch the world pass you by, to watch from beyond a fence, the world just passing you by, and the careers and the romance and the love and passion of life and youth. The world was passing me by. And there are years that I will never, ever get back. And that's why I want to maximize so desperately. I want to maximize whatever time I have left. I want to pack as much into the stream of life as I can. People ask me all the time, what does that mean? Pack into the stream of life. It means what it says. Pack into the stream of life means you pack as much as you can for yourself, but also for others. For others. And when I pack into the stream of life, and I do for others, it is one of the greatest joys of life. And the book constantly tells me that more I give, the more I'm going to get in return. I do make phone calls. I do make phone calls primarily to people that are beyond a certain weight level. I do make phone calls regularly to people who are not 100-pounders by and large, but sometimes 150, 200, 300 pounds overweight. And yes, there are those people among us. It may not be apparent to you because they've lost their weight or because all you're seeing is a face. You can't always tell just from a face, what kind of weight the person carries or is carrying. So I try to concentrate on that strata of suffering. I believe, and this is my belief, I do not have any scientific knowledge of this. I cannot back this up. I cannot prove this to you, but this is what I believe. I believe that compulsive overeating, alcoholism, and other addictions are a spectrum disorder. What does that mean? We are affected identically, the allergy of the body and the twist of the mind. But it is my opinion, just from observation. I am not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. Lord God knows I'm not a mathematician, that's for sure. But the bottom line is, I believe through sheer observation, we are affected identically. We are not affected equally. And with that information, I can do good or I can do bad. And if I sit here and say to myself, I got a worse case of this than so-and-so, self-pity can filter in. I can separate myself from the group through ego, and I'm dead. I'll be in the food in no time at all. So I have to just do with that information what I believe God would want me to do, and that is give my time and give my effort to everyone, but especially the people that have been massively affected by this disease, where their weight is going to be 2, 3, 4, 500 pounds and up, because that's the group that I'm best equipped to identify with. I know what loneliness is. So do you. I know what lonely is. I know how to feel. I know what it feels like, especially like now with the holidays. I know what it's like to see the world pass me by. I know what it's like not to have that significant other. I know what it's like not to have that family. I know what that's like. but now I have a family of you. I'm looking forward to the birthday, not just because it's a great convention. I want to see all of you. I love some of you, and some of you love me. And to embrace you in the lobby of that hotel, to be with you in the lobby of that hotel is like a family reunion for me that comes around once a year. And I look forward to the birthday all year long, not just because I want to hear great speakers and experience the magic of the OA birthday, but I love some of you. You have been part of my life and part of my recovery. And there are those of you who can't make it or don't choose to make it. I love you too, a lot of you, but it is so much a gift to be able to throw my arms around you and say, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here, because without you, I wouldn't be alive today. So it is a very special time for me. Let's go back to page 92. It says here, talk about the conditions of body and mind which accompany it. We covered that. Keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experience. And again, each and every one of you have been equipped with a story that is unique unto the world and that God will use in his wisdom to save the lives of other people. There are 99 of you here right now. Some of you have stories that I can't relate to, but somebody coming in to this program will relate to your story in a way that they're never going to relate to mine, or they're never going to relate to Mo, Larry, Curly, whoever, Bozo the Clown, Oliver. They're not going to relate to that story, but they're going to relate to you. And some of you have been raped, molested. Some of you have been beaten and abandoned. Some of you have suffered great tragedy in your life. And because they have suffered these kinds of tragedies, they feel that they are ineligible to recover. They feel that because of this, they are somehow not going to be able to overcome it. And you can save their lives. Because if you can overcome the horrible things that have happened to you, if you can overcome the horrific challenges in your life, then maybe, just maybe, they can too. So we hear this a lot. Don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle. And when it comes to sponsorship, you don't know how important you may be to somebody coming in. They don't know Bill Wilson. They don't know Roseanne. They don't know Dr. Bob or A.G. Ainsworth. They don't know who any of these people are, but they're sitting in a room with you. And when they hear your story, you are Bill Wilson to them. You are Roseanne to them. You are Ebby to them. You are their savior, because they look to you as someone who went through what you went through, and you came out the other side and you recovered, which is not always something they thought possible. Some of them didn't want to hear that it was possible because, again, the ego has three jobs: make me right, make me feel good right now, and make me different. And that's a good excuse. I did this, or this happened to me, or that happened to me, so I can't recover. Well, you are living proof that says, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because if you did it, then they can do it. Any idiot can count the seeds in an apple, but only God can count the apples in a seed. And you don't know the possibilities, the magic, the healing force that you will unleash by sharing your story with a still suffering person. I'm reminded of a story that I know from 30 years ago. A guy by the name of Scott. He was in AA and he was in NA and he was in OA. It was OA. It was the food that killed him. Very, very good looking Jewish boy. The girls used to go berserk when he was around. I mean, berserk when he was around. He looked more Italian than Jewish, very dark, black hair. I mean, the girls used to go bananas. And he moved out to LA. And while he was in LA, he was answering the phone for AA on a Saturday night. And he came out because of a call. They always go in twos. He and another fellow went out and they went on a call on a Saturday night in the rain to East Los Angeles. And they go to this call and they see a man in a motel, cheap little seedy motel. And they go in and they talk to this guy for about an hour and they realize he's falling asleep. So they cork up the bottle, they put him in bed, and they left. 5 years later, 5 years later in San Diego, California, there was an Alcathon, big AA function. Not OA, AA. Big Al-Anon, AA. I mean, this place is packed. And he's speaking. A guy comes up to him at the end of his lead, throws his arm around him and says, "You saved my life." And this guy, Scott, says, "I don't know you." And the guy says, "Oh, let me explain." And he says, "Do you remember several years ago, you and this other guy came out to East LA to a motel? And you were talking to a guy on the bed and he fell asleep and you left?" He says, yeah, but that wasn't you." He says, "No, you're right. That wasn't me. I was hiding under the bed. I heard every word you guys said, and I haven't had a drink since that day." You never know. You never know. Keep trying to spread this to other people who need to hear it, not to the people who are not compulsive overeaters, not to the people who won't cooperate with you, not to the people who don't do what it is that they're supposed to do. People who show you they don't want this. Don't waste time with them. Don't waste time with them. That is not God's work, to keep sponsoring someone who's constantly in the food and not doing what you need them to do. That's wasting your time that could be spent with someone else. But you never know. And when you pass this to somebody, whether they recover or they don't, you are creating miracles. You are creating miracles. And it says in my part of the Bible, the beginning part, you save one life, you save the world. You save one life, you save the world. So keep on the firing line. And what do you need to do that? You need to be abstinent. You need to be working the steps, and you need to be going to meetings, and you need to be where there's people, or you need to be in Zoom rooms where there's people. But if you're hiding in the house, chances are you're not going to be able to spread your message to anyone. Chances are you're not going to have a message to spread because you're hiding in the house. Let's continue. Page 92. Explain that many are doomed who never realize their predicament. Doctors are rightly loath to tell alcoholic patients the whole story unless it will serve some good purpose. Doctors, schmachters. Doctors are great. I'm not diminishing doctors. Doctors have been screaming at the top of their lungs at me since I was 4 years old. Screaming at me and scaring the crap out of me. I mean, scaring the living crap out of me. What they didn't know is that I would have given anything to have acquiesced to their demands. I would have done anything that I could possibly do if only I could have been what they wanted me to be. And that was thin and normal and good instead of fat and bad. So what I picked up on very early age is if you're fat, you are existentially incorrect for the world that we live in. Fat people, doctors told me this, rabbis told me this, parents of my friends told me this, the world told me this. If you are fat, you suck. That's what the world showed me at a very early age. They taught me that existentially I am incorrect. And in my zeal to rebel against them, I almost killed myself in the process. I would have fulfilled their prophecy by eating myself to death. Part of my tantruming with a knife and a fork was to give them the finger because I was hurt by them. I had to let go of that hurt. I had to let go of that feeling of F them, I'm not going to do what they want me to do because they are not going to hurt me that way. They're not going to treat me that way. The world is a very cruel place for a fat boy, a fat kid. And I, like anybody, I don't regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it, but I'll level with you here. I wouldn't wish being a fat kid on anybody. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But today, I'm 224 pounds. Every garment on my body, I've said this before, the garments on my body, every one of them come from a normal store. Or if that store has a big and tall section, these garments that I'm wearing do not come from that section. Not that that's bad. I am just not a big and tall size any longer. I can walk 3 miles 6 days a week. I can get in and out of a car. I can sit in a booth in a restaurant. I can go to the movies and fit in the seat. I can wear clothes. Every garment in my closet. I don't have an extensive wardrobe, but I have clothes. I have shirts, pants, whatever. Everything fits. And it has fit for years. And there are garments I have worn and worn them out. I never knew what it was like to wear out a garment. The only time I wore it out was in the thighs. I have thunder thighs. Thanks, Mom. I have thunder thighs. And when I would walk, it used to rub out. And what could I do? So, but I know what it's like today to wear out a garment. I know what it's like today to be able to stand and sit and walk and live. I tasted life. If I die today, I want the 101 of you to know this. I lived. I was alive. I lived. I tasted what life was like, and I never thought that possible for someone like me. And sponsoring and being sponsored is not a small part of that. It's not a big part of that. It's a huge part of that. Every time I get off the phone with one of my sponsees, I say to that person, thank you for helping God keep me out of the food for one more day. Don't miss this. Don't miss it. Every one of my sponsees is my professor. I learn much more from them than they will ever learn from me. It is my honor to be their sponsor. Let's continue. But you may talk to him about the hopelessness of alcoholism because you offer a solution. I will tell you that the hopelessness of compulsive overeating is horrible. Not only does it get worse over time, but it gets much worse over time. Because as I age, that's the way it is. I have to eat less and less food, or I'm going to gain weight. But as I age and my body is less able to fend off the weight, I become more sedentary. The more sedentary I become, the more weight I gain. The more weight I gain, the more sedentary I become. The more sedentary I become, the more weight I gain. The more weight I gain, the more sedentary I become. Do you see where we're going with this? I have to become active. And in order to do that, I must have a food plan. I must be abstinent. I must be working a program. And a huge component of working a program is sponsorship. Our friend Kim G in New Jersey says, "Are you afraid to sponsor? You better be afraid not to." Without sponsoring others, recovery is not possible. Dieting for a short period of time is possible, but you are not in recovery if you are working an 11-step program. You only are in recovery if you're working a 12-step program. I am not in the results business. If I'm your sponsor and you choose not to recover and continue eating, that's not on me, that's on you. I gave you the best I could give you. Maybe I just wasn't the right voice for you to hear. That happens, and it happens more than you think. You know, I'm not everything to all people. There are people walking around who they needed to hear a different voice. They just needed to hear a different voice. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. You will soon have your friend admitting he has many, if not all, of the traits of the alcoholic. That's a very important thing, because they're not coming here for information. They may think they are. They're coming here for identification. And if you didn't hear identification, you would not be here today. You need to hear somebody that says the things that you were only thinking. What does Dr. Silkworth teach us? All the way in the front of the book, it says, in order for the message to be carried, it must have depth and weight. And if it doesn't have depth and weight, it's not going to get carried. What about those doctors so long ago that used to scream at me and show me that I'm not on the chart? You know, they used to have a chart. If you're 5 years old, you're going to weigh this or you're going to weigh that. I wasn't even on the chart because kids were not expected to weigh what I weighed. What about those rabbis that screamed at me about this? What about all the adults and kids in my life that sent me a very clear signal that if you're a fat boy, you suck? I know that's not what they were saying, but that's what I was hearing. What about those people? Why are you different than them? Why can you help me and they can't? They have medical degrees. You don't. They have all kinds of education. You don't. You may be a simple ditch digger. You may be a simple whatever, and you can save my life where others can't. Why is that? Because you speak and understand the language of the heart. And in order to speak and understand the language of the heart, you must have experienced the nightmarish horror of this disease. You must have experienced what it's like to live in the disease, and you must have experienced what it's like to live in recovery. So in other words, without knowing it, I'm going to want to know, what were you like? What happened to you? And what are you like now? And if you can show me your story, I didn't say tell me, don't just tell me, show me. If you can tell me and show me how this works for you, you have life-giving properties because you speak and understand the language of the heart. You are uniquely qualified to save lives. Let's continue. Bottom of 92. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is alcoholic, so much the better. Doctors cannot tell me I'm a compulsive overeater. I can tell me I'm a compulsive overeater. Doctors don't know. This is a self-diagnosing disease. Doctors can tell me I'm significantly overweight. Doctors can tell me I have high cholesterol. Doctors can tell me my blood sugar is no good. Doctors can tell me I have strep throat or I have an earache or whatever I have. Well, they can't tell me. I have an infection. Doctors are qualified to tell me all those things. I'm not diminishing the education and well-intentioned doctors that are out there, but this is a self-diagnosing disease. And without my diagnosis, without me knowing, yes, I have this disease, nobody can pronounce me a compulsive overeater. Nobody. So much the better. Even though your protege, the word sponsee and sponsor are not in here, may not have entirely admitted his condition, he has become very curious to know how you got well. That's one thing we want to evoke in them is some curiosity. If all the things you're telling me about what you did with food and how the weight affected you, how did you get well? Well, let me tell you, and boy, do I have a book for you. Let's continue at the top of 93. Let him ask you that question if he will. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. Don't be ashamed that this is a spiritual program. You chase them out because of the God concept, the food will chase them right back in. You chase them out. God did this for me. This is a spiritual program. Don't you worry about it. Those Twinkies, those potato chips, those French fries, pizzas, they will chase that guy or gal right back in here. Don't you worry about a thing. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. I don't think there's a person on the face of the earth that would agree with my perception of God. Every one of us that's here right now and every one of us in the world, if I say the word God, each and every one of us probably has a different, unique concept of what that is. Why? Because we all have our own paradigm. We all have our own distinctive outlook on life. And maybe we need different things from God or think different things about God because we are different people. For me, I am not an atheist. I am not an agnostic. I absolutely believe in God. However, there are pockets of agnosticism that I don't want to give up. I don't want to give up control of my romantic life. I want to be able to control this response and how this person is going to act toward me. And that's ridiculous. It doesn't make any common sense, especially after what I've been through in life. But yet I want to be able to control that. I want the world to give me the lottery numbers for tonight so I don't have to work anymore. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So there are pockets of agnosticism that plague me from time to time. And those pockets of agnosticism have the power to kill, because the more I have my own will, my own way, the worse my life gets. And the more God has his way in my life, the better my life gets. I have been through divorce and breakups in recovery. I have lost the relationship with my only child in recovery. I have been hurt by the world in recovery. Just because I'm in recovery, that does not mean that the promise that was laid at my feet as a 5-year-old, lose weight and everything will be okay, that's not the case. You lose weight and you weigh less, but there are still going to be challenges. There are still going to be problems. There are still going to be mountains in my path that only God can bring me across. And as I face the next mountain, be it romance, be it finance, be it health, be it my child, be it friends, whatever, as I face, sometimes what I have to do is not look forward, but I have to look backward at the mountain ranges that God has traversed me through. So I remember how powerful He is. Look at the mountains I have overcome. Why would I doubt that the next challenge is too much for God? But yet I will if I'm not careful. I don't think I'm alone in that. Not from what I've heard for 45 years, almost 46 years. I don't think I'm alone in that. So sometimes we have to take a minute to look at our writing if we journal. Sometimes I have to take a minute to remember if we don't journal, whatever. I have to remember, oh my God, God got me out of that situation. Oh my God, God got me out of that situation. Oh my God, and on and on and on. Why would I doubt Him? Yet my fear comes up and I will say to myself, yes, but if I don't get my way here, I'm going to be sad. Horse hockey. If I don't get my way here, I'm going to be better off because God's human rejection is God's protection. Yet I don't want to hear that. I want what I want. Doesn't work that way. Not for the betterment of my recovery, it doesn't. Do I remember that I'm turning my will, which is my action, my thinking, and my life, which is my action, over to the care and direction of God? Do I remember that I prayed this morning, the 11th step? First thing I did this morning, I went to the bathroom first, but don't tell anybody. It says on awakening, I got to go to the bathroom first. My kidneys and bladder, they won't stand for that. But right after I took care of my kidneys and bladder, I did step 11. I prayed. You know what they say, if you pray, don't worry. If you worry, don't pray. So I prayed this morning, yet I want this. I want that. I want her. I want it. I want them. I want that. Doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Let's continue. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. Jimmy Burwell was an atheist. He recovered. Lots of people are agnostics. They recover. What is an agnostic? An agnostic is someone without knowledge. Ag means without. Gnostic means knowledge. You don't have to believe in a religious deity. Now, my deity is religious. I was taught that as a kid. It makes perfect sense to me. The Cubs won the World Series in 2016. That's all the proof I need. I mean, the Cubs won the World Series after 105 years of not winning the World Series. I don't need any more proof than that. I'm hoping that the Ducks can win the national championship. Well, we'll see what happens. But when the Cubs won the World Series, all thought that there is no God evaporated immediately. I mean, if that's possible, that's only God can do that. Okay, the main thing, and this is in italics, the main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself and that he live by spiritual principles. What are the spiritual principles? The steps. Does it say he has to believe? No, it says here he has to be willing to believe. Remember page 47. Do I believe? or am I even willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? Go out tonight. These are very short days. The shortest day is December 21st. Now we're getting a little longer, but we're still in very short days. Go out tonight and look at the sky and see the stars. See the airplanes flying around if you can. Did you create that? Did you create the lakes and the streams? Did you create that? You did not. How could I not be willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself when I have 26 years tomorrow of abstinence from compulsive overeating? I'm alive and I'm living my life. I am alive. Wow. What a miracle. What a program. What a trip. What a concept. And I haven't even begun to scratch the surface. I'll be damned if I'm going to turn back to the food now. I want to drink in as much life as I can. I don't want to miss another minute of this wonderful, glorious life. Let's continue. When dealing with such a person, you had better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. What are the spiritual principles? The steps. There is no use arousing any prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions. I don't know any theological terms or conceptions, so I'm off the hook there, about which he may already be confused. Don't raise such issues no matter what your own convictions are. Your prospect may belong to a religious denomination. His religious education and training may be far superior to yours. In that case, he is going to wonder how you can add anything to what he already knows. But he will be curious to learn why his own convictions have not worked and why yours seem to work so well. He may be an example of the truth that faith alone is insufficient. It sure is. Now, this next sentence, I have it highlighted in my book, but I also have it highlighted in my brain because it's also tied into many, many situations here that the Oxford group expresses so well about service. Remember Ebby's legacy at bottom of 14, top of 15? Do you remember all through the book it talks about service, serving others? You remember page 77 where it says my real purpose is to fit myself to be of maximum service to God and the people about me? Do you remember all those? Let's look at the next sentence, because when the big book wants to teach us something, it does not teach it to us once. It repeats it over and over and over again, because the purest form of instruction is repetition. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish, constructive action. In other words, sponsoring other people. Let him see that you are not there to instruct him in religion. Admit that he probably knows more about it than you do, but call to his attention the fact that however deep his faith and knowledge, he could not have applied it or he would not drink. Perhaps your story will help him see where he has failed to practice the very precepts he knows so well. We represent no particular faith or denomination. We are dealing only with general principles common to most denominations. So we have people coming in that have religious training far superior to ours. I have sat in meetings with nuns, rabbis, ministers, priests, deacons, lay people from the church, you name it. And if their practices were sufficient to bring about food neutrality, we wouldn't be having a conversation about the suffering they're feeling from the food. They wouldn't be in an OA meeting, they'd be recovered. On the same level, I am weary of the conversations that I have with people who do not want to do the steps because they did them already. If you did the steps effectively already, you wouldn't have been in relapse for the last X amount of time. We wouldn't be having a conversation about how you can't pull yourself out of the food. We wouldn't be having a conversation about how you put back on 175 pounds. We wouldn't be having a conversation about how you're ashamed to go out of the house for Thanksgiving because you don't want your sisters to see how much weight you've gained, or your brothers to see how much weight you've gained, or your kids to show them how much weight you've gained. We wouldn't be having these conversations. So at some point, fabulous reality has to settle in. You have to be the adult in the room. A sponsor has to be the adult in the room. And you have to mercifully point that out to these people. I'm sorry, if what you did before in working the steps was effective, we wouldn't be in this pickle right now. We wouldn't be having this conversation. You have to point that stuff out. It's very, very important. So, summarizing what we've covered today, if you take a look at what we're doing, we have information that the outside people do not have. Does that make us better or no? It just makes us uniquely qualified to sponsor. It makes us uniquely qualified to speak and understand the language of the heart. It makes us qualified to do the things necessary to save a person's life, which is extremely important for us to do. In saving your own life, you will give to God the greatest gift possible. You're maximizing your potential to save other people, and then the next person is also an instrument of God. Very, very important. So we have this responsibility to sponsor. Some of us are afraid because we're afraid we won't do it perfectly. Forget about doing it perfectly. Nobody sponsored you perfectly. Nobody sponsors perfectly. We are also not in the results business. If I sponsor Mo, Larry, and Curly and none of them recover, oh well. The number of men I have sponsored in my life that are not in recovery is staggering. Staggering. But the number of men that I have sponsored that are in recovery is significant. And they are instruments of God. And they are out there on the front line sponsoring others, some of which will recover and most of which will not. But the ones that they are sponsoring will become instruments of God. They will become oases in the desert of futility. This is a vicious disease. Doctors can't really help you. Ministers, priests, and rabbis can't really help you. They can help your medical needs, your religious needs, but they cannot help you stay out of the food. But the people here can, and the people here must, because as it says all through the book, when you give to other people, you will get back in measure that you cannot believe. I am 70 years old. Doctors have been signing my death warrant from the time I was a teenager. I'm alive. I'm abstinent. My bills are paid. My home is mine. My car is mine. I have excellent credit. Am I rich enough to retire? No. I hope that will change. I hope some Dutch uncle that I don't even know exists surfaces with a large inheritance or something, but that's probably not going to happen. But the bottom line is, I not only am alive, but I'm living life to the fullest. And I love it because I've missed out on too much already to say, okay, I'm just going to eat and just be done with it. I'm not doing that. Before we transition to questions and answers, I hope that this has been helpful. I hope that this has opened up some information for you that you can utilize in your life. I hope that it has. No math questions, please. No math, no food questions. And please keep your cameras on because it's just so much more inviting when there's cameras on than not. If you can, go to OALA.org, Los Angeles Overeaters Anonymous.